No, not really. Any other questions, Mr. Allen?
Well, it's my understanding, Senator, that that this, first of all, this is an extraordinary museum that is a kind of a statewide treasure or heritage spot, and they bring in educators from all over the state to give them curriculum and tools, walk them through the museum, so that there is it's my understanding that this is a statewide program, like so many things, and they have a base in one place in the state, and we have to deal with the fact that there's geographies involved, but that they do cover educators from all over the state. That's my understanding of the program.
Well, I've been to the museum, and I think they also have a touring exhibit that's very impressive. I'm just confused by maybe the terminology that's used. So you're saying we haven't done anything with this program in the past, and this is brand new?
Well, so last year the program was funded in a different area of the budget. I believe it was the Parks Department, but I'd have to get back to you on the specific source of where it was funded last year. So in this year's budget, there is a corresponding decrease. I believe it's in the Parks budget, but it's somewhere else to accommodate the fact that where the source of funding last year is no longer there for 15-16, and this is an increase to Los Angeles County of Education's budget so that they can continue support. In terms of the programmatic support level of this program, it's flat from 14-15 to 15-16.
Okay, overall.
Correct.
Okay.
And the County Office of Los Angeles, County Office of Education, is kind of the fiscal agent for this, but it is a statewide program. I think LA County being chosen because that's where the museum is located. Okay, with that, any public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll ask the staff to read the motion and call the roll.
The motion on item 17 is to approve with amendments to proposed trailer bill to specify that funds are to support anti-bias education, inclusion, and leadership training for educators to be refined as necessary. Senator Blah?
Aye.
Senator Allen?
Aye.
Senator Morlock?
Aye.
I do this because of the echo.
That's fine. You just tap me. I can do it too.
Number 18, local assistance evaluation rubrics. Department of Finance.
Amber Alexander with the Department of Finance. The May revision appropriates $350,000 in one-time Proposition 98 General Fund for support and development of the evaluation rubrics. As you may be aware, the State Board of Education has contracted with WestEd to lead and assist with the development of these rubrics, and the rubrics are required to be adopted by October 1st of 2015. In the 2013 Budget Act, $2 million general fund was appropriated for these purposes. However, WestEd has identified some activities that will need to be performed after the rubrics have been adopted, and that is where the $350,000 will be going. This money is to specifically support the following activities that they will be performing after the adoption. The rubrics will require some ongoing hosting and maintenance for the online version and the website. In addition, as the accountability system evolves, there will likely be changes that need to be made, and so ongoing revisions to the rubrics are likely necessary, and these funds will support those efforts. In addition, the trailer bill language directs the department to contract with the San Joaquin County Office of Education for these activities, and that is because San Joaquin County has access to a lot of the data files that will be necessary because of their work with the State Accountability Report Card. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. LAO.
Edgar Cabral with the LAO. We didn't have any specific concerns with this proposal, but we would just point out that this is sort of a temporary fix for an ongoing issue that you'll have to address next year, which is what is the state's role in supporting, in helping districts and using these evaluation rubrics, which along with LCAPs are now part of our state's kind of the basis of our state's accountability system. And so this deals with the issue of how it's funded in the budget year, but then moving forward, beginning in 16-17, there needs to be a permanent fix to figure out what the state's role should be and what amount of funding we should be providing.
Thank you. Department of Ed.
Monique Ramos, Department of Ed, we don't have any concerns with this proposal.
Thank you. Any questions from members of the committee? Any public comment? Seeing none, I'll ask staff to please read the motion and call the roll.
Slight amendment to the recommendation. Recommendation for number 18 would be to approve as proposed, adopt trailer bill to be refined as necessary. Senator Block,
Aye.
Senator Allen,
Aye.
Senator Morlock.
Okay, moving to item 19, local assistance resources for aligning support systems. We'll begin with Department of Finance.
Good afternoon again, Lisa Merzinski with the Department of Finance. This, again, is the issue that I'd mentioned as a part of the Special Education Task Force recommendation. And it is $10 million to provide one-time Proposition 98 general fund. And this would provide incentive grants and assistance to districts that are interested in implementing school-wide data-driven systems of support, basically aligning their systems of support across. It's a general education expenditure as opposed to special education because all students benefit from these. And there's research also in the task force report and online that indicate that implementing these type of systems really do lead to improved outcomes for students, both behavioral and academic improvement.
Thank you. LAO.
Rachel Ehlers, LAO. This was a big theme of the task force, and of course, research does support that greater inclusion of students with disabilities being educated alongside their peers it leads to better outcomes. But we had recommended that you reject this proposal. Our concerns are really that the details are not defined enough of how the funds would be spent, what they're for. Even in the description, you see there's a plan due by June 30th, 2016, a year from now. So we just think it's premature to allocate funds right now when we don't have enough specifics for how they would be used.
Thank you. Department?
Monique Ramos on behalf of the Department of Education in support of the proposal, and we're happy to continue to work with legislature, LAO, and finance on how to implement these dollars.
Questions from committee members? Mr. Morlock.
It's a little unclear to me. Is it the 10 million for the study, or is the 10 million for whatever the study recommends?
So it's not really a study, but it's more a program to assist districts that are interested in implementing and they don't have local resources. So it would be developing statewide resources to disseminate those resources, have symposiums, that type of thing, in addition to providing incentive grants to districts that need additional support in order to implement these programs. So at that, after the one-time grant is up, the districts would then now continue and support with their local control funding formula these type of programs or this system.
Could you give me an example, Ms. Rosinski,
on
what we're trying to align and why aren't we aligned right now? What are we fixing?
So these systems of support, and I do not claim to be a technical expert in this area. And our Department of Ed folks aren't here.
Then
So
Monique,
the tiered systems of
why don't you help me? Why are you guys? What's broken?
So I unfortunately let our technical expert go, thinking we were done with special ed, so I apologize. I think the goal, and I think we can have the conversation of this, is to utilize research that's out there surrounding data and provide data-driven supports to schools and to teachers. And I believe that's the intent of the proposal.
Well, give me an example.
So I can give you a large example, I suppose. But so aligning these systems would be a kind of a tiered approach where you have a universal blanket of either some sort of academic or behavioral type method, and you identify students that need a little bit more assistance, and you have resources on the ready and available in order to provide those systems. At that point that you identify, you take the next tier of a little bit more assistance is needed for these students. So you kind of build these so that they're ready to go. The teachers are the professional development is there so that teachers know what happens if you have a student that falls in these categories. And then as you move up the tiers, then there's more immediate intervention available for students. So it's just kind of lining across all of the education components of the school and allowing for more inclusion with special education students in this. They're saying that it leads to more identification, earlier identification, and also the earlier interventions that prevent students from remaining in the special education or being identified as special ed. I don't know if that helped. I apologize. It is a very complicated.
Well, you refer to some report in your remarks. So what report are we
the
talking
Special
about?
Education Task Force report.
Okay, we heard that,
Yes,
a couple
at another
weeks
hearing.
ago.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public who wish to comment on item number whatever? 19. Item number whatever. Okay, seeing none, we will move to a vote. I'll ask the staff to read the recommendation.
Recommendation on number 19 is to approve adopt trailer bill to be refined as necessary to specify that funds are provided to contract with county offices to develop statewide models and develop and disseminate statewide resources, and for grants to local educational agencies to be refined as necessary.
Please call the roll.
Senator Block?
Aye.
Senator Allen? Aye. Senator Morlock?
Aye.
Okay, please show number 19 passing 3-0. We move now to number 20, Local Assistance Quality Education Investment Act Transition Funding. Department of Finance.
Lisa Merzinski again with the Department of Finance. So this is basically kind of a little assistance to those school districts that qualified for QEA program in the past for 13-14 and 14-15 to allow them a step down as their local control funding formula ramps up. But some districts are kind of caught in the middle where they have schools that are of lower income and qualified for QEA, but they are in a district that does not qualify for the concentration grants, that threshold. So this is just a one-year funding in order to assist them until funding catches up, they're able to adjust the resources in their classrooms.
Okay, LAO.
We would note that the QIA program was a settlement from a lawsuit against the state and has been in place since 2007, 2008. Districts have known that this funding was going to take off after the 14-15 school year, so that they've known for quite a while that this funding was going to end. Statewide, there are districts that have concentrated schools but are not concentrated on a district-wide level and therefore don't qualify for concentration funding. This particular proposal would only provide additional funding to a very small subset of those schools facing that issue.
Thank you. Department of Education.
Monique Ramos, Department of Education. At this time, we don't have a position on the proposal.
And the staff position would be to reject this item and to instead use those dollars for educator effectiveness, professional development. Is that correct? Okay. Questions from members of the committee? Any public comment? Then we'll move to a vote. Please read the motion and call the roll.
Motion on item 20 would be to reject this proposal, redirect one-time funds for professional development for educator effectiveness. Senator Block?
Aye.
Senator Allen? Aye. Senator Morlock?
No.
Please show this passing 2-1. Moving now to item 21. By the way, after we finish part A of the agenda, we'll take about a 10-minute recess and then come for part B. Item 21, adult education. This is just the state operations piece, and we'll hear from, yes, clearly this is not the whole adult education issue. We'll be covering that on Friday at the full budget hearing. This is just state operations. Department of Finance.
Thank you. Keith Nizam, Department of Finance. The mayor revision includes $335,000 general fund to fund 3 existing federal adult education positions to work on the adult education block grant proposal to implement and administer. This would be alongside 3 current positions at the community colleges.
For half a year?
No, this is full year funding.
Thank you. LAO?
Natasha Collins, LAO. We recommend approving this proposal. We believe that workload aligns with these positions and staffing.
Thank you.
Monique Ramos, Department of Ed. We appreciate this being funded. It is essentially dollars to help support the new adult ed proposal that will be adopted this year.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from members? Any comment from the public? I'll ask staff to please read the motion and call the roll.
On item 21, the motion is to approve as proposed. Senator Block?
Aye.
Senator Allen? Aye. Senator Morlock?
At the end of the day. Okay, item 22, we're going to hold open till we take, excuse me, till we take action item number 14. So we'll move to 23, State Operations and Instructional Quality Commission. We'll start with the Department of Finance.
Amber Alexander with the Department of Finance. The May revision provides $274,000 in one-time general fund to support the curriculum framework activities of the Instructional Quality Commission. Specifically, this funding will support work on the history, social science, science, and health frameworks in 2015-16, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Elliot?
Edgar Cabral with the LAO. We didn't have any concerns with this proposal.
Thank you.
Monique Ramos, Department of Ed. We appreciate the additional funding to do the work.
Okay, any questions from members? Seeing none, any public comment? Seeing none, ask staff to read the motion and call the roll.
Motion on item 23 is to approve as proposed. Senator Bloch.
Aye.
Senator Allen.
Aye.
Senator Morlock.
Please show 23 being passed 3-0. Moving now to 24, Standardized Account Code Structure Replacement Project. Okay, we'll begin with the Department of Finance.
Good afternoon, Chair Leader with the Department of Finance. The governor's budget provides $6.1 million, and the May revision proposes to reappropriate $6.1 million for the Standardized Account Code Structure Replacement Program. SACS is the data system used to collect and report data for the local education agencies. However, it is outdated and not supported by current operating systems. This proposal reflects an updated total project cost to support the replacement of the SACS system.
Thank you. LEO.
Jamil Nakfi, LAO. As you may have heard earlier, the original feasibility study document that was released in 2011 had an overall cost estimate of $5.9 million. The new revised cost estimate is more than 3 times that, approximately $21 million. Reason for that is that a number of costs were either underestimated or excluded from the original document, including software, contracting costs, data storage. However, that being said, we have reviewed the justification, and we feel that particularly concerning the competitive bid process that was followed and the documentation of the new costs, we believe those costs are justified and reasonable. So we have no concerns with this proposal. It takes funds that were allocated for, just to provide some background, it was expected that this year, 14-15, would be year 1 of software development. Because of the delay in approval of these contract documents, that wasn't able to take place. It's now anticipated that the year 1 will be 15-16, so this merely kind of reappropriates the $6.1 million in funding from current year into the budget year, on top of the $6.1 million provided in the January budget, for a total of $12.2 million. I'll also note that, again, based on the estimated cost of $21 million, which includes one-time and ongoing costs, there will be a need for additional augmentations in the future that you'll have to look at as part of the budget process. So.
Thank you. Department of Education.
Monique Ramos on behalf of the Department of Education. We appreciate the funding coming through and the recommendation. This is an important software system that essentially enables us to fund schools. Thank you.
Questions from members? Mr. Morlock?
Just an overall thought, because some of these software projects seem to drag out and seem to go over budget. We've got a sad record, not only at the state level, but at other levels. What are we doing to prevent that from occurring? What have we learned anything from some of these prior projects?
So there's a newer system in place surrounding the Office of Technology, and they have new systems in place. This project was originally started back in 2008-9, so frankly, because of the recession, we had to delay implementation and weren't able to really start it again until later, but the Office of Technology does have new systems in place to address these issues. This project has gone through that new system at this point.
So if I may add one comment too, I know one of the changes from the original document is that the criticality of the project was upgraded from a low priority to a medium priority project. based on the function that this project serves in collecting financial data from all of our local educational agencies. So based on that, that kind of increases some of the standards that our Department of Technology applies to this project. So, for example, there are additional oversight requirements that are now apply to this project because of the upgraded criticality. So the hope is that those safeguards will kind of help prevent some of these issues that we've seen with state IT projects in the past.
So is this being done internally, or do we retain outside code writers?
The department can speak to this, but my understanding is that they are certainly intending to sign a contract to do the software development work.
So the department is contracting out in order to do the software development work. And the software will be retained at the Department of Technology on their server systems, which is required in state law.
Okay, so does that contract have any penalty provisions if the vendor fails to meet the?
I don't have that information with me. I can follow up with staff.
Thank you. Thank you,
If
Mr.
there are
Chair.
no further questions, any members of the public have comment on this? If not, I'll ask the staff to please read the recommendation and call the roll.
Motion on item 24 would be to approve as proposed. Senator Blah?
Aye.
Senator Allen? Senator Morlock?
Moving to item 25, local control funding formula, home to school transportation. Begin with Department of Finance.
Ian Johnson, Department of Finance. Just some quick background that under current law, JPAs will no longer receive direct funding from the former transportation categorical program beginning in 15-16. Absent any proposal, this funding would get subsumed into the larger local control funding formula and be dispersed among the over 2,000 LEAs. So our governor's budget proposal would require that this funding be redirected to the member districts of the JPAs as a permanent add-on to their district LCFF entitlements. The districts would be required to continue to spend this money on transportation services, and that would include but not necessarily be limited to continuing to support the JPAs that they're members of.
Thank you. Elio?
Kenneth Capon with the Analyst's Office. We do not have any concerns with this proposal. This proposal would treat school districts similarly regardless of how they were formerly funded for transportation, and it's consistent with the way the state has chosen to shift other JPA funding back to member districts with the adoption of the LCFF.
Thank you. Department?
Monique Ramos on behalf of the Department of Ed. We also don't have any concerns with the proposal.
Thank you. Any questions from members? Any comments from the public? We have a comment from the public. Come on up to the side microphones here. You have 1 minute.
Nicholas Chavez with the California Association of School Transportation Officials and the School Transportation Coalition. We appreciate the work in attempting to fix the School Transportation Joint Powers Agreement funding issue, but would like the consideration of an option to allow LEAs to maintain district funding with their Transportation Joint Powers Agreement. In the interest of time, I do have the articulation of our position in the handout. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Yes, Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Jeff Vaca, representing the California Association of School Business Officials. Associate myself with Mr. Chavez's remarks. There are a very small number of JPAs that provide transportation funding in the state. We don't believe that it would be inconsistent with the local control funding formula to allow those JPAs to receive direct funding. The school districts, it would actually reduce paperwork and administrative burden on those school districts. And so we would just like to have this continue this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Pat Whalen, Ellison Wilson Advocacy here on behalf of the Southern California Regional Occupational Center. I'd like to echo the comments of the preceding speaker and just indicate that for a regional occupational center that serves a wide geographic area, it's difficult to get students there without this kind of funding. So.
Thank you. Let me go back to now the three offices present. The speakers support, I guess, status quo and funding still going to the JPAs. Do each of you support the idea of moving to individual districts? Is it?
When you say moving to individual districts, do you mean continuing to fund the member districts as opposed to the JPAs directly?
That's correct.
Yeah, well, that's our proposal, so
Okay.
yes.
And you both support that?
Right, so we think the governor has a reasonable proposal. Existing law would continue the flexibility districts have to form, join, create, leave JPAs just as they have now. If that's a more efficient option for transportation, they can continue to organize that way and pass their funding through to those JPAs.
And the department?
We agree, we're in support.
Okay, questions from members? Mr. Allen?
I guess I'm just, and maybe I missed it as part of the original discussion, but could you just give me I know what ends up, with all of the, with LCFF, there have just been, in the previous system, there was all these JPAs and of all sorts of different types. We're talking about transportation JPAs, regional occupational centers, all sorts of agreements that districts came together to support particular types of programming or needs. And obviously LCFF has changed the formula. Everything's now going through districts. Could you give a sense of, your sense of the concerns that were just raised by the folks who came in public comment, and the extent to which we can make sure that their important activities are not disrupted by this seemingly neutral change in funding mechanism, but that might end up jamming people up unnecessarily?
I think our response would be that it's important to us to continue to directly fund districts because that's the new paradigm that we're under LCFF. In terms of concerns that transportation costs will no longer be covered, we'd note that there is a permanent maintenance of effort on this funding that goes out for transportation purposes. So we think that concern is already addressed in current law. And any funding that's redirected as a result of our proposal will continue to have a maintenance of effort requirement. So districts will still continue to have to spend this funding on transportation, which is a little different than the overall funding that they get under LCFF, but we think that addresses the concerns that you've heard.
Okay, seeing no further questions, public already having had an opportunity to comment, I will ask staff to read the motion and call the roll.
On item 25, motion is to approve trailer bill to be refined as necessary. Senator Block?
Aye.
Senator Allen? Senator Morlock?
Please show number 25 passing 3-0. Moved on to item 26, amend the LCFF transition funding calculation. Start with finance.
So the May revision proposes a slight change to the way that we appropriate the transition funding for local control funding formula, and that would be based on the percentage that we estimate the gap will be closed by, as opposed to a flat dollar amount like we've done for the last 2 years. So I think the simplest way to think about this is LCFF is essentially two parts. You've got floor funding, which is currently about $46 billion, and then you've got transition or gap funding that we're proposing to be just over $6 billion. So currently, floor funding is continuously appropriated, which means the exact amount of that floor can change slightly as ADA changes. Gap funding, on the other hand, under the past practice that we've done for the last 2 years, has been appropriated differently as a flat dollar amount. And so rather than have that funding change as ADA changes for a local district, when the gap percentage changes, each district gets less funding. And so under past practice, we'll tell districts, we think that X amount of funding will close, let's say 25% of the gap. And so they'll build their budgets based on an assumption that their local gap will be closed by 25%. To the extent that statewide ADA changes happen and now we can only close 24% of the gap, that individual LEA, due to changes statewide that didn't happen just locally in their district, will receive less funding. And so what we've heard is that creates uncertainty for them, because while they can plan for changes in ADA locally, they can't necessarily plan for how ADA is changing statewide. And so by appropriating a percentage instead of a dollar amount, we'll be providing certainty to all districts that as soon as the budget's approved and starting on July 1, they can know that they'll, under our proposal, have 53% of their local gap closed. As another benefit, we've heard that the Department of Education, because of this flat dollar amount, They have a lot of unnecessary and complicated workload that they incur because trying to allocate a flat dollar amount amongst 2,000 LEAs causes them to have to run multiple iterations in a very compressed timeline. And so, again, switching to a percentage, we think, provides much more certainty for districts, and it eases workload and complication for the department. I see in the staff comments that there's a note that this could provide more uncertainty at the state level, and I would just note that while that's true, it might mean a swing, we think, only in the tens of millions of dollars in terms of how much gap funding we actually spend. We would note that, as I mentioned at the beginning of my comments, the current floor that's continuously appropriated is $46 billion. And so that comes in, that won't come in at $46 billion when the budget year, when actuals come in 2 years from now. That floor could be up or down $1 billion. So we are already subjected to a lot of uncertainty. And so this proposal, we think the benefits that you get by appropriating it as a gap percentage far outweigh any potential cost exposure that we would be opening ourselves up to.
Let's hear a response from the LAO.
We would just note that this, as Mr. Johnson already discussed, does create additional uncertainty for the state that the state does not currently face. So yes, there are pieces of the base funding that will change based on ADA adjustments. However, right now, the transition funding to LCFF is fixed, so there's no uncertainty there. This would create uncertainty at the state level and open the state up to new risk in terms of having to appropriate more funding for school districts, or perhaps if we underestimate the cost of a particular gap funding, actually less. The risk, at least for the budget year, for each percentage that the estimate would be off would be around $100 million. So while 1 percentage point doesn't seem like very much on a statewide basis, there is quite a significant swing. So we just want to note for the legislature that there is additional risk, not that there isn't already existing risk, but this creates more uncertainty.
Thank you.
I would just add to that, if I may, that in 13-14 and 14-15, the actual gap closure percentage has come in closer than 1%. So we over the last 2 years, we have been very good and very precise at estimating what that gap closure will be.